Hi there, guys. My name's Phil Akers. I'm one of the senior coaches here at the Belfry, obviously working from home at the moment, and joined today by Dr. Dan Adams, who is a doctor in elite performance coaching. I've known Dan for a couple of years now, and just absolutely honoured to be able to go through this series with him, learn myself, and hopefully help a few of you guys out on sort of through the series of the different areas that we're going to cover. And today we're going to be talking about skill versus technique. But Dan, why don't you just give a little bit of an overview of yourself to start off with, and introduce yourself, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep it, short and sweet. For the last 15 years, I've been working with various golfers at all different levels, from beginner to major winners, Solheim Cup players. I've coached 9 majors, over 30 tour players, bunch of qualifications in different areas. I'd like to say I've got a relatively broad knowledge in different disciplines, and that's part of my goal as a performance coach, is to try and tie them all in together and have them work together, not fighting against each other. So
cool.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, I love that. So Dan, sort of obviously today discussing skill versus technique, and during this time, I mean, like, you only have to go on sort of like social media channels or open up one of the golf magazines, and you'll see that it's so heavily weighted towards sort of technique at the moment. And I mean, like, I think that it's probably what average Joe wants, right? Everyone wants to know if they change their grip like this, they're going to hit the ball like Tiger Woods. But why does that happen? And I mean, like, what is the difference between skill and technique? I mean, like, could you maybe just go into them two areas and sort of like maybe a bit of a brief overview of them?
Absolutely. So the majority of golfers have a fixated focus on the attainment of a particular technique, largely because, like you say, Rory McIlroy has this particular elbow. So they think that's going to help them improve, but they lose sight of actually, well, why are you changing that elbow? You're changing the elbow to obtain a particular skill. And a lot of golfers, if you ask them, why are you working on that drill? Why are you working on that technique? They can't give you that answer instantly. In fact, they can tell you the drill more than they can tell you what the skill is. And it's the skill that we are after. So there is a difference between the technique and the skill. And ultimately, that's what we're going to be going into here. As a whole, I would say that, the skill is, we can almost look at it as if there are games within the game. So let's go give you a very quick example. Let's just go straight to chipping, for example. As we give you the examples, you'll get the definition. What is required to become a great chipper? And the viewers now, I'd suggest, pause the video, write down right now, what would be your answers? What would be the initial things, right? To become a great chipper, to be the best chipper in the world, what do I need to do to be great at it? Write your answers down. Now, my perspective, the skill of chipping, one of the skills, is we need to pick a spot on the ground where we want the ball to land. So landing control, we need to have the skill, the ability to pick a particular area on the ground where we think, right, I need the ball to land here. So that is one of the skills of chipping, is landing control. There's no point picking a spot and then landing it 3 foot long or 3 foot short or 2 foot to the right. We need to be great at picking a spot and landing the ball on that particular area. One of the second skills might be rollout control, controlling the distance the ball rolls out after you've hit the shot. So now, as we've just highlighted two skills within the game of chipping, we then can look at, right, what techniques now might we use to help us achieve it? Now, the skill itself would be relatively steady and consistent for all players, whereas the techniques, the drills, can alter. And that's why when we look at the game's best players, they all have a variety of different techniques and drills and feels, but they are all trying to obtain the same skill.
Yeah, I love, and
a little bit.
I think it's so common when people sort of like step in for golf lessons with us, and maybe it's their first lesson or something, and you're trying to get a bit of background information on if they've had lessons in the past or if they've been working on anything in particular. And they're so quick to tell you the technical things that they're working on, and they're going to tell me like as the coach, what they need to do.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's like, they're like, well, I've got to change my grip, and I know what you're going to say, and so, and it's a little bit like, whoa, like, what's the actual skills that you haven't got? And
Yeah,
where,
what are we?
yeah, absolutely. Sort of like, can you land the ball, as you say, in that area? And if you can't, well, okay, there's not one way of getting it there. Like, we could go super high, we could go middle, we could go low, like, but actually, sort of like, you're going to need sort of a different technique to change them ball flights, let's say, but you can still achieve the outcome. So I think the big part of that is people starting to understand actually that they can achieve a skill without desirable techniques, potentially something that we might not teach you as a technique. Like Phil Mickelson would be a great example of that, like telling people, say, like hinge in and hold it as they're chipping in it. My God, that's so hard for average Joe to actually control that technique.
Yeah.
But he can still perform the skill.
Yeah,
like,
that's it.
So just because it's great for him doesn't mean that it's great for everyone. So then all of these millions of golfers then going out and going, well, Phil Mickelson said that I've got to do this, so it's got to be in that perfect position.
Yeah.
And then dig the leading edge into the ground and wonder why their chipping's gone backwards.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the painful thing, as you mentioned it, is they've lost as they go and say to try and hinge and hold it because Phil Mickelson, oh, he's great. Well, we must all do it. They lose sight of the skill.
Yeah, massively.
They lose sight of why are you hinge and holding? Oh, just because Phil Mickelson does it, right? Well, he's doing it for a particular reason. He might be doing it to control the spin rate, to control the launch angle, to control the start direction. They would be the skills, but you can't give me that answer. So you're kind of just following a cookbook recipe without really knowing how the spices integrate or why are we creating this particular food.
I love that. I think that's a really nice way of explaining it, sort of like thinking about what a perfect spag bowl's like or whatever, and understanding sort of like them ingredients that are going to go into it to achieve that sort of thing. And
so you hear Gordon Ramsay say, well, add a bit of this, add a bit of that. Well, let's just throw any spice in, let's just copy blindlessly what he says. And I think what you made a great point there about when someone comes in for a lesson, we'll just stick with chipping, for example. Oh, I'm bad at chipping. Why? Oh, because my grip, because of this, because of that. They're not really getting to the core root. They may say, well, when I chip, it goes nowhere near the goal, nowhere near the hole. Okay. So initially they think it's, well, because of the technique. Well, it might be because of the landing control. The ball doesn't go near the hole because you're picking a spot and then you're landing it 5 foot beyond it, because your skill, your awareness, your feel, your touch, your sensitivity around the greens needs improving. That's probably not going to come from a different grip. By me just altering your grip is not going to give you that feel and that sensitivity.
I think that's a lovely thing. If ever you get a chance, sort of like people watching this, to go and watch a kid for the first time when they're learning how to chip, and you ask them where they're going to land the ball, or like go and put a ball down where they want it to land, and they'll put it next to the hole because they don't have the understanding that actually the ball's going to roll out. So when they do land it next to the hole and it rolls off over the other side of the green, they're like, well, you land it where you want it to. Like, what's the difference? So just by changing that concept of where to land it wasn't necessarily a bad shot that they hit. It was just the wrong idea of where they wanted to land the bloody thing, which has caused that ball to roll out there. So I think so many people get caught up in the technique, and it's not to poo-poo technique. I don't think that either of us are trying to sort of like say that, but I think that the emphasis that most golfers have on their practice would be heavily towards creating a hinge and hold or whatever, rather than actually having the emphasis on, okay, well, do I understand what the core values of that shot are? Like, do I understand where it's got to land, how it's going to spin, how the grass or sort of like friction in between club base and ball is going to actually affect that, And once you start to, I think that's the thing. If we can start to build a bigger library and understanding of these skills of what actually need to happen to create a good shot, you sort of can find your own way there.
Absolutely. And like you say, it's important not to poo-poo technique, because as a whole, largely, that's why we prescribe particular techniques, because as a whole, we tend to get this result, but not always. It depends. People are different. So technique, as a whole leads towards more consistency and an increase in performance, but not always the case. Because when we take, for example, Jim Furyk, if we were to look at his swing playing from a textbook, doesn't look pretty model, it doesn't look that great. But his ability to access the skill is unbelievable. And I've even heard him say when he tries to make a nicer looking swing, a more on-plane swing, he literally cannot keep it on the range. His ability to access the skill, as in start line and curvature control, totally goes out the window.
Yeah.
So it's a case of, okay, technique has its place, it's important. We're going to use a particular technique to help you get your skill or access the skill. A particular technique, not the technique.
Yeah.
And that's why such a variety now on the tour between wrist conditions and grips and left arm positions and postures and stances. Back in the day, old school coaching was, this is the grip, this is the stance, this is the way to swing a club. No alternatives. But now the best player in the world is showing us actually there is.
So let's say that you get a complete beginner in and they come in and say, look, before I pick up any bad habits, I want to learn the correct way, as it were, sort of thing. What would you sort of say to them people? What would be the first things that you start to introduce to them then?
Well, like I say, it is tricky. You would lean more towards, on a whole, this is the particular technique that appears to be the strongest. But we'd have a hint of variability and, I wouldn't say personal preference, but it has to be suited to you.
Yeah.
So we'd start off with a clear intention of what are the skills of the game are. So I've got to hit the ball high, I've got to hit the ball straight, I've got to hit the ball in this, I've got to curve the ball in this direction, or I've got to move the ball at this speed along the green. Okay, so that's the skill. That is the number one thing to make clear. Then we will discover your technique. We may initially go to, okay, as a whole, that's why, like if you went to a doctor, that's why they give you a particular medication, because as a whole, this medication solves this problem. Doesn't always, you might need an alternative approach. But, you know, we have to go with what the statistics and the data might suggest.
And I think that's a really nice thing that you've picked up on there, Dan, like the statistics and the data. It's an awful lot different when you say have a tour pro come in compared to average Joe that comes in, because let's say that we looked at Bryson DeChambeau a couple of years ago, something like that, really hot topic at the moment. He was, let's say that he was number 20 in the world and he wants to get to world number 1 sort of thing. He's really lucky that he's got all this data link information disposal. He can see what the gap is between, say, him and what Dustin Johnson's doing, and he can see sort of like that his club heads, or like his the ability to hit the ball 320 yards. He maybe didn't have that ability to do that, or that skill to do that.
That's it. Yeah.
So then he put his focus on how he's going to achieve that, right? But he's got data to back it up. Where average Joe just wants to be straighter, but
absolutely,
you know, sort of like they don't really know. It's really easy for them to get caught up in the wrong areas because nothing's backing it up. It's just their opinion rather than cold hard fact, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like I say, they start chasing a technique that is largely suited to help them, but without the direct insight to what we are focusing on. What's the skill? You know, we use the example, say, of alignment. Both ourselves, at times when we're given a golf lesson, we can purposely aim 30, 40 yards left or right and still start the ball straight and hit it straight.
Yeah.
Now that's because of the skill. So technically,
maybe undesirable technique, but it's still manageable. Like you can still coordinate that movement to create the outcome that we want to achieve. Yeah,
absolutely. Like Freddie Couples comes to mind. You know, he aims way left and hits like a nice push fade on. But it doesn't matter about what the technique is. He doesn't care. He is just interested in the skill. And I think I've heard like Matt Kuchar say something similar. You know, everyone goes on about his very low left arm position. He says as soon as he sees his swing on camera, he's chasing now a particular look, and he loses all sensation and feel and awareness of where's the face. I can't even keep it on the planet. It looks good, but skill's gone. Now, what would you rather have, the skill or the look?
I think that's a brilliant point that you raised there. And I listened to a really good podcast the other week with Adam Scott on it. And Adam Scott hasn't looked at his golf swing for about 3 years, which is mad, right? Because
Yeah,
everyone's like, well, I want to, like, if you could pick one poster boy for golf swing technique that we're going to use,
you'd go.
everyone's
Oh yeah,
got Scotty's your man, yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's funny, sort of like, I think he sort of suggested it himself when he was young. He used to put a huge emphasis on the technique and what it looked like,
Hmm.
rather than actually the skill of what's going to achieve the results that he wants to, which was winning majors.
Absolutely, and even maybe by chance, you know, without doubt, he's probably has spent a good period of his time focusing on technique, but also by chance, it is possible he may have just arrived at that swing without even trying to hit a technical, artificial position.
Yeah,
It's just his way of finding it. Now,
yeah.
If Jim Furyk was the greatest golfer ever, if he won ultimate, as many majors as
Um,
anybody.
Jack Nicklaus, did you mean?
No, if Jim Furyk
Oh,
had won,
sorry.
we'd all be chasing his particular. Oh God, we got to swing it like Jim Furyk, and it's like, well, let's chase the skill, not so much the technical look of it. Let the technique kind of, not say take care of itself, but the skill is the granddaddy of all things, in my opinion.
I think that's it, and it's that balance, isn't it? I think what we're trying to get over is that there's probably an unhealthy emphasis put on technique,
Yeah.
and not so much emphasis put on the skill. Like, you only have to look down the driving range when you go down there. Like, it can be the same when you look on the range at a tour event, right? Like,
Mhm.
people are looking an awful lot at technique.
Absolutely, and even you mentioned Jack Nicklaus there, which gave me a good reminder as you move towards technique here now. If we look at, say, like TrackMan and all the 3D data, a lot of people are chasing the numbers and trying to calibrate their perception with what is actual, which you would think that would clearly, you want to know what is really going on. If you truly knew what you were doing, you've got a better chance of performing. Well, if we take someone like Jack Nicklaus and ask him to explain what starts the ball, what curves it, well, he suggests the path starts it and the face curves it,
Yeah,
which,
the physics might be actually wrong, but
but
he
in
can
his
still
will,
achieve. Yeah,
it helps him access the skill better than anybody we know of. So you could be literally psychologically, technically wrong. Your concepts could be factually wrong, but you could still perform at a high level. And in fact, if we went to Jack and said, by the way, Jack, you're actually wrong. What starts the ball and what curves it, it's back to front. Now
yeah,
his world is upside down. What is black is white, and what is white is black, and left is right, and right is. He's totally bamboozled.
yeah.
Maybe he might play better, but maybe we might make him a lot worse as well.
I think that's it. And as a golf coach, that's the scary bit, isn't it? If we pin
Mm-hmm.
our hat on making a technical change, I think that we're setting ourselves up also for failure with it, because it's like, well, you can currently do something. You can hit this shot without thinking about it, and you can actually, you've sort of figured out a way after 10,000 golf balls of making it get there, even though it goes left to right or whatever.
Yeah.
You can sort of do that. So when someone comes in and they're like, well, Phil, I want to hit the ball straight, or I want to hit it low and right to left, or whatever, something like that. It's that, okay, well, something's got to change the skill, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and what drives it. But ultimately, it doesn't mean that you're going to get to a better level than where you currently was or where you was before. And I think that's the risky bit. When anyone ever makes a technical change, you've got to keep that skill at the forefront of your mind, but also understand that it might not necessarily make you a better player. So having these stats behind you, understanding, are you actually good enough at it, or does it need to change?
100%. Yeah. There are people, without naming names, there are people who have the most beautiful textbook swings, but their performance levels on the course might not be the same as others who do not have such beautiful textbook swings. Their
Yeah.
ability to hit the ball a particular distance or control the shape of the flight is not as good, as effective as other players who might not technically look that, like say you look at Bryson, you look at a swing, it looks a bit awkward, a little bit funky, but his driving efficiency might be better than the guy who technically looks brilliant.
And like, especially with that, like that focus of understanding it. I mean, like, I think I read something the other day, like if people understand about strokes gained, basically if someone comes into me saying that they've got you obviously know this, but for anyone viewing this, like, so strokes gained basically the proximity to the hole. So someone might come in and say, look, Phil, I'm rubbish at putting. I have 36 putts around, but I don't know if their first putt's from 2 foot away each hole or if it's from 50 foot away each hole. So that person from 2 foot away, yeah, you're rubbish at putting. From 50 foot away, yeah, you're really good. You're well classed.
A triple breaker from 50 feet, 2 putting is pretty good.
Exactly, sort of thing. So, like, just having that data to lead you in the right direction, I think, is massive with it. And I think there's so much good information to help you with that. Sort of like, there's a great book, isn't there? Every shot counts, by a guy called Mark Brody. I really recommend that people have a look into some stats and start to help them maybe get prepared for summer, to get a year full of stats behind them or a season full of stats behind them, to then be able to go to your coaching end of September, early October and be like, look, these are the skills that I haven't got.
Yeah.
And can we, if we are going to make a technical change, this is what's leading it.
Yeah.
You know, sort of like, because
not the other way around, as you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than just coming in to me and saying, I need to change my grip. Like, why?
Yeah, my elbow position,
Exactly. Like, why would I change Jim Furyk's grip, or why would I change Dustin Johnson's grip? I should only do it for a reason, and that reason should be the skill, right?
Absolutely. Like, what one guy that just jumps to mind there, which we all, a technique we all hate, is the chicken wing on the follow through. But when we look back to when Jordan Spieth was playing at his best, that chicken wing was definitely Westwood.
Westwood this year. But again, European #1, like.
Yeah.
Why does it need to be a straight left arm? Like.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. I think it's one of the myths. Like I said, it's one of the myths of the game as a whole. We could say, well, generally the left arm bend, the face rotation, and we can kind of correlate it with other movements, but not always the case.
Yeah.
I think that's what highlights why golf performance and golf coaching is tricky. It is a little bit of a Rubik's cube. We've got to figure out, if we move this piece, let's see how it reacts. It's we're not mechanical machines of tweak this, and you will be fine. It's, let's just tweak this, see how you react to it first.
If you do this, then our job is actually to be able to say, well, look, this might happen.
Yeah.
It could be like a whole load of movement variabilities, and it may not work for you.
Yeah.
But actually, our job is to understand, okay, if we change that, then that might happen, or this could happen. And it's not just that one way of doing it. It's just like, okay, well, look, you've got this way. You could do it like that. But you might be able to do it like this as well. Like, you might be able to get that ball there like Matt Kuchar, swinging it very flat. But you could also do it a little bit like Jim Furyk by swinging it that little bit more upright on the way back.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, like I say, it is very much a discovery as well. And one of the frustrations, I guess, as a coach is, even if you outlay this to the player up front and say, look, this particular drill might not be the drill for you, but we have to start somewhere. Let's see how you react to it. And they may nod their head and go, oh, yes, I've got it. They go off, oh, it didn't work. And then they don't come back for the lesson. Oh, that lesson was rubbish. The drill he gave me didn't work. It's like, okay, we did say this is just a drill. It's not the drill. It's one of many options.
Yeah.
So we need to discover your way of accessing the desired skill.
I like that. And I think sort of like, you start with the concept of the drill, right? What's got to happen, like, to achieve that skill? Yep. And then, okay, what are the building blocks that we put in place for it? And, you've got the physics of what need to happen. To hit a draw, we know that the club face has got to be close to the path, let's say, and that the path's got to be right with the target. So, okay, well, them things have to happen if we're going to achieve that. But it might be that we achieve that by aiming 40 yards right of your target with your body.
Yeah, absolutely. Or feeling like Jack Nicklaus, feeling like your path starts and the face curves it, as a feel, as an idea, as a concept. Doesn't mean it actually is the case. But if it helps you access the skill, Jack Nicklaus is a great poster boy for that. I'm happy to with him.
So, do you think that it's very important to understand what real is and what feel is then?
I think it's, you would think it is, but I know a lot of players who their perception of what they think is happening and what is actually happening are black and white, but they get brilliant at accessing the skill.
Yeah.
Now, this is the big question. Well, what if you told them what really was happening? Would they improve more, or would it be such a shake-up to their, use a word, kind of their reflex system, their kind of awareness? Would it shake their world so much that it totally knocks them out? You know, it's you know, you can kind of relate that to fitness. We've seen a lot of guys who've been very kind of big in stature, who've been great golfers. They've gone to the gym, worked out, lost loads of weight, gained load of muscle, and now I've actually kind of hit the ball.
Yeah.
Or being stronger, being more athletic, surely you'd be a better golfer. Well, actually, it's not always the case because it's such a drastic change. It shocks the system so much. They're in a different body.
Yeah, they spent so much time calibrating what they have and just becoming really good at it. Like that's what got them there.
Yeah.
That's a really nice thing about when people, or a really tricky thing when people say step on the range when they've just got on tour.
Mm-hmm.
They think that they've got to change stuff to reach the next level or to catch Rory McIlroy in that. But sometimes just sort of almost slow and steady and working with your skills and incrementally getting a little bit better rather than having to do this drastic change, which I suppose Martin Keimer's a really nice example of that, where he's like, well, look, he spent all these thousands of hours on the range hitting that ball left to right, and then he's like, well, I'm never going to win the Masters unless I hit a draw. Changed, went from like world number one to way down the world rankings, and it's like, would he, if he stuck with that right to left, who knows? He may have got to a higher level if he just stuck with it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. He may have never won the Masters, but he may have won an extra 7 majors.
Yeah.
Obviously, with all of the Masters.
Or he goes back to what he knows, and if he had maybe just tried to incrementally change little things, or actually focus on different areas of the game, like if he had them stats backing up that he's not hitting it, say, straight enough as a result of the curvature that he's putting on the ball or something, then fair enough. But if it was actually that he was good enough to win the Masters with that, but actually, like if we made his chipping, I don't know, 0.5 of a shot better over the course of the year or whatever, that might have done it, you know, or got him to world number one. And I think too often people want to just rewrite sort of like the rule book or want to reinvent the wheel with their games rather than actually just picking little pieces of the pie to sort of improve. And I always sort of like think about sort of like these stats are really important, right? Like you look at the top 10 in the world at the moment, and you'll see sort of like that they hit the ball really bloody long because all this information's come out there about strokes gained, like why it's sort of almost 65%, or it's like 65% weighted on distance compared to accuracy with it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But actually, like, so how did Luke Donald get to world number one?
Well, exactly. I think that leads us for our next session when we're talking about distance versus accuracy. I think that is you touched on a great point there. How did Luke Donald get to number one in the world? Not really the longest hitter.
No.
So it's
like miles off that. But
absolutely.
And you know, sort of like it's just whether he then said, right, well, I've got to put all of my efforts into getting as long as Bryson, and then neglected his short game, let's say, and actually dropped to like down the world ranking sort of thing as a result of that. It's a really tough balancing act. And what I sort of urge all of the people that watch this is never make these changes without really having the correct reasons to do it or something to back it up with that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and that probably brings us to a close with this a little bit. Probably quite a nice natural ending with it, unless there's anything more that you sort of.
I think we've hit that hard. We've said, look, skill is the granddaddy. That's ultimately what you are chasing. That's what you're trying to achieve. There is variability in the techniques and drills. Don't get sucked into because somebody is doing this, I ought to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because Rory McIlroy has a particular right elbow, it doesn't mean you ought to be doing it also.
Yeah.
You might get away with it. It might help you, but it might also hurt you because you don't swing. The other components aren't like Rory McIlroy for a start. It's about matching.
That's probably one little thing that we haven't touched upon is sort of like people's individual differences in the, you know what, you might try and swing it like Adam Scott, But Jesus, like if you're sitting 8 hours behind a desk all day and you've got C posture and you're weak and inflexible, how the hell do you expect to move like that athlete?
Exactly. Absolutely. 100%. We've got to figure out the golden rule is figuring out your way. Now,
Yeah.
unless you are Adam Scott, you're probably not going to swing like Adam Scott. We need to figure out your unique way of accessing the skill first technique a close second.
Bingo. So when you hear about all these things like the, I don't know, stack and tilt or one plane or MORAD and all of these things, like there is nothing wrong with stuff like that. Okay, that can help you achieve certain skills and that, but never forget that there's more than one way to skin this cat. The skill is ultimately the holy grail. So never just think that I must do this. It's like, okay, you could do that.
Yeah.
But what else could I do? And then try it. Then go away and figure out what's the best way for you. You know, that's the big takeaway I would sort of try and suggest for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Cool, Dan. Thanks so much for your time.
No problem.
Anyone watching it has really enjoyed that, and if you've got any questions about it, please feel free to comment on it. And we look forward to the next one.
Yeah, brilliant. Catch you soon.
See you guys. Bye bye.